So I was so short at the time that I like stood up on the bench of the truck. So I had pulled myself up on the dash to see what was going on. And then when he turned, I turned too. And so now this little guy, is like inches from my face. Like he's standing just outside the window, the glass window, and I was holding the door frame, and he said, "Do not be afraid, we mean you no harm."
Welcome. I'm here with Justin Bush. Justin, welcome.
Thank you.
Very high level, if you could just tell the audience briefly about your background, where you are, and then we'll get started with some of your experiences.
Okay, so I would call myself a lifelong abductee. Do you want to know like where I am, or just what I'm thinking nowadays?
I mean, you could say where, because it's relevant. It's kind of
okay. Yeah, no,
it's same state I grew up in, but
no, I live in Northern Virginia.
Now you live in Northern Virginia, but you grew up in Delaware, right?
Oh yeah. No, I grew up in Sussex County, Delaware. Kind of, they call it lower, slower Delaware because it's like
I know. I grew up in Wilmington, so.
Oh, you grew up in Wilmington? My mom lived in Newark for a while, so okay. I stayed up in Newark when I was a young preteen for a little while. But yeah, so I grew up on a mile from the bay, and technically our address was Lewis Beach, but the dividing line between Rehoboth and Lewis Beach was right there on our property. So if you walked across the street, just like if you were going to get the mail, right, you would be on Rehoboth Beach. So Rehoboth was on our right side, and Lewis was our left side.
You know who lives in Lewis, Delaware right now, right?
Who?
You know who Jim Semivan is?
Oh, I do know. I do. He lives in Lewis right now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I know exactly who he is. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, former CIA guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's where I grew up. My grandfather was a farmer. My dad drove trucks. My mom and dad divorced. So she was like a homemaker for a while and then separated. And we were kind of, we stayed with my dad almost always, but we visited my mom and all that stuff. But we had all these cornfields around our house, soybean and corn. And then if you took your bike or whatever, walked down the road, just about like 1.6 miles down is a dead end. It dead ends at the bay. And right down there's a boat dock. It used to be used a lot, but they build newer docks every once in a while. So there was like a bunch of old boats that nobody used anymore that were, still tied up, and the docks kind of dilapidated. And, but we used to play down there as kids all the time, find a bunch of arrowheads down, because the shore washes away down. There's this like big padded layer of pine back when the water level was lower, and that whole area was forest. So there's a whole bunch of Native American burial grounds down there. My stepbrother found like a hatchet down there, like a small hatchet. I found like little arrowheads and things. But yeah, that's where I grew up, playing in the woods and living on it's on the corner of Route 24 and Mulberry Knoll Road. And my grandfather's house, my aunt's house, and my dad's house were right there together. And then we had extended family that lived there once upon a time. By the time we got older, they died and, sold their properties and stuff. But my grandfather's brother lived right next to him. He was our neighbor. And then on the other side he was my Uncle Thomas and his wife. It was Thomas. Can't remember Grace's husband's name. But anyway, this is like, they called it Bush's Corner because all our family lived, like there was probably at one time 7 or 8 houses, something like that. They were just all on this one little piece of land. But yeah, that's where all my UFO stuff started. All of my earliest encounters were, either it was mostly that field in front of our house. That's where like 99% of everything happened.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
But every once in a while we get one. I had one land outside, like maybe 20 foot away from the house, out my bedroom window one time. I had one hover over the front driveway in the middle of the night. That happened. It was the same night. Yeah, so we, just strange UFO stuff.
Family background. Do any family members have a history of abductions?
Oh yeah, my dad and, my mom and my dad both have had things happen, but I don't know how to explain this to people. I'll just give it to you like this. I told my mom that I had an encounter when I was like 21. And she was like, well, maybe they're your guardian angels. And so she had her own encounters, but she refused to consider it to be UFOs or aliens or anything like that. My dad had his own encounters, many of them actually. Well, at least some that I know about. He did the same thing. He refused to call them aliens. He will only call them demons. He will describe them, light bulb shaped head, short, big, slanted black eyes, almost no mouth, little holes for a nose. He will describe them to you the same way everybody describes them, but he refuses to call them aliens. Like, just absolutely refuses to call them that. I know he's had UFO encounters because we've had them together. I know he's been abducted. There was one night where, they used to leave my bedroom door open because I was a little kid. I had a nightlight. And there was one night I woke up and my mom and dad were marching down the hallway towards the kitchen. And there was a gray alien with them behind them. I think there was one in front of them and I just missed it when I opened my eyes. If I just opened my eyes a second earlier, I would have saw it, but I did. I think I might have seen its arm as they were going down the hallway. But anyway, so they walked past my door in like a trance, if you want to call it that. Just completely oblivious, just like, and the one comes up behind them and it turns and sees me and it walks into the room up to the side of the bed. And then I just black out and wake up the next day. There was also another time with my father where we were both wide awake. We went for a drive down that road and there was a UFO hovering in that field I was talking about. And he stopped off the side of the road to look at it. And
what did it look like, by the way? What did it look like?
So it was probably 100 yards away and it had this big orange light on the side of it. So you couldn't really tell the shape. But when it came up, like when it got real close to us, it looked like an eyeball, I guess, if you kind of drew the outline of an eyeball. Mm-hmm. I didn't get to see it very well. It landed on something. I think it stuck legs out and landed. I definitely saw the door open, the contrast. When that little, it had like a little arched doorway. When that arched doorway came down, you could easily see the contrast between the inside of the craft and the outside. So it was a little bit lighter inside. So not like it wasn't like a big bright light coming out or anything, but it was enough light that when that door came down, you could easily see it. But they pointed this conical, I would call it a laser light, but if you think of a spotlight and then you just increase the brightness of it to like a laser but it was a yellow conical spotlight. So this thing was hovering and it was kind of just doing that, like almost like a candle, a little bit of weave to it. And my dad stopped me. He was like, what the heck is that thing? It slowly started going around the corner. It was like it heard him and it slowly started following the edge of the field. And there's this jut out where my grandfather has a deer stand, right? And so it's like a thin row of trees right there that pokes out of the forest. And if you're driving let's say your truck, it goes around that jut out and around to the other side. They leave it there so they can hunt. So it kind of makes a little perfect hunting blind back there. But anyway, this thing started very slowly coming around the field up to that row of trees. And right when it got to the row of trees, it shot that bright light out and it swept through the trees. Then it made these two very fast motions, one to the left or our left, and then one straight at the truck. And my dad had already stopped on the side of the road. And so now they're pointing this really bright yellow light at my dad's face. And so he picked his hand up to block the light. And I was behind him, so I could see, the light wasn't blinding me because his body was blocking it. So I could see that door open up out the window. I could see them land. And they lowered just a few feet, and then that door opened up and the creature came out. The first creature came out all the way down to the road, walked right in front of my dad's headlights. This was 9, maybe call it 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So it walked right in front of his headlights, a foot away from him. His truck, this thing's head was just a few inches over the truck hood. So you couldn't get a real good look at its face or anything from when it walked around. But then when it come around the corner, I turned to meet it. So I was so short at the time that I like stood up on the bench of the truck. So I had pulled myself up on the dash to see what was going on. And then when he turned, I turned too. And so now this little guy is like inches from my face. Like he's standing just outside the window, the glass window. And I was holding the door frame. And he said, "Do not be afraid. We mean you no harm." That was the first thing he said. In fact, that's what almost every time that's what they say.
Did you hear that verbally or did you?
Oh, no. That's all I have never heard them speak. It's always telepathic. Telepathy is so hard to explain to people because it's more than people think it's words.
Images too, right?
Right. Somebody
and
called
emotions.
Somebody called it thought projection. I think that's better, where it's like you can feel. One time I had that telepathic communication, and it was like they were showing me what they could see with their own eyes in real time. If you think of like your phone going off and your Ring camera and you're watching in real time, maybe with like a half a second delay or something, they did that one time. So I'm like, I'm seeing what this person's seeing. It's really trippy. But he came around. He said, "Do not be afraid. We mean you no harm." And then the other two came to my dad's side. I did turn back once or twice to see what was going on because there was a commotion. I don't know if they opened his door or if he got out on his own, but I heard them arguing about whether, because they were saying you have to go with us. And he was like, "My son, I don't want to leave my son." And then the one was like, "Oh, don't worry. We're going to leave somebody with him to look out for him or look over him." That's not the word they used, but they said something like that. "We're going to leave somebody to watch over him until your return." And then they took him away. And I asked for my dad at one point to the little crew. I was like, "I want my dad." And he said, "Do not be afraid." He said, "Your father will return shortly. No harm will come to him." And then he said something else to me that was very similar, that he was like, he said something about like, "I would not be harmed." I can't remember his exact words, but he said something like that. So anyway, they took my dad, and the very first thing he did was start like bombarding me with thoughts, like questions. He asked me so many questions so fast that I literally was like, I can't answer. Like I couldn't even make out the questions. It was like, when I try to explain this to people, the best way I found to explain it is take a book and just flop it in somebody's face. Like just go, and you're like, what's on page 62? Like you can't absorb it fast enough. So he bombarded me and I literally was like, whoa, I can't answer questions that fast. And he heard me say that or think that or whatever you want to say. And he responded. He was like, "Oh, okay." And he slowed down and he asked me how old I was. He asked me if I went to school. He asked me what grade I was in. So he asked me how old I was. I said I was in kindergarten. He asked me if I went to school. I said yes. He asked me what grade I was in. I said kindergarten, right? And he said, I don't know what that is. And so I was like, well, it's the grade before first grade. And he was like, I understand that. And then he asked me where we were going. He was like, where are you going? And I told him we were going to the end of the road. And he was like, why? I was like, we just going for a drive. This is what we do. And he was like, that doesn't make any logical sense. And he was like, there has to be a reason that you're going down there. And I was like, no, we're just driving. And he said something to the effect of, perhaps I'll ask your father. Perhaps he has not informed you of the reason that you're going there because you are a child. And I was like, no, we're just going for a drive. And so he reiterated, he's like, that makes no sense that you would waste time and resources to go from one place to another for no reason. And he said, there must be a reason. And I was like, no, sometimes we just go for a drive. Little kids. So I was like, no, nuh-uh, like, little kids. But yeah, so I was like, no, nuh-uh, we're just going for a drive. And he was like, he accepted my answer, but he let me know. Like the last thing he said to me was like, it didn't make any sense to waste time and resources for no reason, which was kind of funny. Anyway, I started asking him about him, and I eventually blacked out.
Did he say anything?
Yeah, he did, but I don't usually.
What did you ask him?
So this was a short creature that was bald with big black eyes. So I was like, he already told me he was a man. Like, I don't know how to explain this to people. I was telling somebody the other day about it, and they were like, well, they tell you their pronouns. And I was like, that's not like that. It's like extraneous information.
Yeah, you just know.
Right. If you pick up a phone and there's a lady on the other end, you're to 90-some% accuracy, this is a lady. They present when they communicate with you, whether they're male or female. And so I already knew he was a short male. And I was asking him where he came from. I know he showed me a planet. Like, I know for a fact he showed me. It was like a black background, and then in the center was a planet, and it was backlit. Like there might have been a sun off this way that was shining. And at the very top, you could see a little white part. I don't know, I said to somebody else, I don't know if it was ice or if it was land or what it was. And then it also looked like maybe either clouds. You have to understand, I'm looking at the backside of this thing. It's dark. So to me, it looked like it was a lot of ocean on this planet, wherever this was. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe that these patches were clouds, but I don't know if they were land or a cloud. I just thought they were clouds. But he showed me that. And then I asked him like where they came from. He showed me that. And then he said, I do remember this really well. I usually avoid talking about where they came from because I don't remember if he gave me any name. Like, my girlfriend asked me, like, did he say like a star system or something? And I don't remember that at all. But what I do remember really well is that he said to me that they had been here for many thousands of years. And he said that they had been here since the time of the pyramids. And he showed me a picture, what I thought was the Great Pyramids. It was 3 pyramids in a row, and they were like nice. They weren't all messed up. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me, that because he said he was 800 years old when I was asking him about himself. And he said he was 800. And I was like, it doesn't make sense that you've been here for thousands of years if you're only 800 years old.
His species, right? His species.
Right, but I was a kid. I didn't... And not only that, but when he said he was 800 years old, I immediately was like, is my grandpa going to look like you when he gets old? Because I knew my grandpa was really old and he was balding. So I was like, is my grandfather going to end up looking like you when he gets old? And he was like, no. He was like, that's not going to happen. But they used to make fun of my grandmother all the time for shrinking. Every Easter, they're like, oh, you're shrinking, and she used to get really mad about it. My family likes to pester each other. So I was like, oh, my grandfather's going to shrink and his eyes are going to get, big or whatever. And he was like, no, that's not how I don't know why I thought that, but I was a little kid. So I was like, that was my first thought, is like, oh, my grandpa's going to end up like this little man. So I called him a little old man because of all that. But as we're talking, I just black out. Like, literally, it's like somebody put their hands over my eyes. And the reason I say that is because my father came back. I heard him with my ears open the truck door. I felt him get in the truck. My father's a big man, and every time he gets in and out of the truck, the whole truck rocks. So I felt the shocks go down, and I heard the door slam. This was an old work truck of his. It's kind of like a square body. And so when he would slam the door really hard. And that's what snapped me out of it. Like, whatever trance or whatever was happening. When I opened my eyes, I was still right where I was, but the guy was gone. The little creature was gone. So I'm looking left and looking right, trying to find, I'm like, where'd he go? And my dad just starts walloping on me, right? He's hitting me. And he's yelling so fast that I don't know what he's saying. He's just going, da 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 da. And what he was saying, sit down, sit down, sit down. So my dad was having a full-on like panic attack. Like, he just got abducted. They let him go, and he's losing his mind. And I was standing on my feet, and he was trying to get me to sit so he could drive away. And so he hit me a few times, and his last swipe, he like physically knocked me on my ass. Like, he was hitting kind of like the middle of my back towards my butt, like swiping me down. So he knocks me down, and he just peels out. And he rips the truck all the way across 2 lanes into halfway into the right ditch. So he came from the left ditch, goes to the right ditch, jerks the truck back into the middle of the road, slams on the brakes, I wasn't in a seatbelt. So I literally slid off the seat, flopped underneath the dashboard onto the ground. He said, hold on. And he jerks it in reverse and he's spinning it. He's jamming the gas so hard. Every time he does anything, he's spinning tires. And so there's a little roadway, a little dirt road. What he did was he crossed the road and pulled back out and stopped to make a 3-point turn because we had no choice. It's a dead end. So he can't go that way. He's got to turn around. So he did this crazy maneuver. I fall on the ground. While he was reversing and spinning his tires, I climbed back up. And so he pulled out and he fishtailed. He pulled out so fast, he fishtailed. And as he's now on the road headed to our house, I see the craft again. So it's still in the field, but it's just flying away from us really slow. So like the road's right here, the craft is flying off at a V shape like this. So we're kind of separating a little bit by little bit as we go, but we stayed pretty much in line with each other. So he got up to probably 100 miles an hour, right? I'm just watching the craft. So it's flying towards, there's a field and then there's a tree line and it's starting to lift up off the ground like it was going to fly over the trees, right? So I'm watching that and all of a sudden my dad kind of screams out and he goes, oh no, we're losing it. We're going to flip. And so I turn away and I just see fear on my father's face, like the lights from the dash on his face. And I've never seen him so scared. There's a turn. And when we came around that turn, he literally slid across the entire road, jumped the ditch into the field, jumped. It's hard to explain, but the road is like curved like this. So he jumps from here. He's supposed to go around this way. He jumped from here into the field, jumped again and back onto the roadway and fishtailed. And the whole time he's just screaming, we're going to roll. We're going to roll. Hold on. We're going to roll. And so he smacked me at one point when we jumped onto the roadway and it took my attention away from the craft. Like he hit me pretty hard. You know, when a parent like tries to keep their kid in the seat or whatever, during an accident. So he just hit me so hard that I was like, oh. Anyway, when I look back, the craft was gone. I don't know if it shot off. I don't know if it went below the trees or whatever. So he almost crashes. And then he mumbles to himself when he finally gets back on the road and corrects. Like we were fishtailing. He's trying to hold on. He mumbled to himself. He was like, I got to slow down. He didn't really slow down that much. He pulled in our driveway probably 50 miles an hour. He stopped and slid all the way across our driveway and almost ran into our house. He stopped it could have been a foot between his front bumper and the foundation of our house. He almost plowed his truck through the house. And so he's like, oh my God, we're going to hit the house. And we stopped just in time and he just starts screaming. He's like, go, 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 go inside. And so we run in, he slams the door, he locks it, he's looking out the window and checking to see if they followed us. And I've never seen him panic like this before. And so all I said was, I was behind him. And all I said was, I was like, Dad, what was that? And he just starts going off on me. He's like, get your ass in your bed and go to sleep. And he just starts screaming, get back there and go to bed. And so I started crying. And then I went and lay down, went to sleep. The next morning, though, my grandmother came to watch me. My dad and mom separated. So she came over to pick me up before my dad went to work. And he was getting ready in the bathroom. And I was telling my grandmother what happened. So I was like, yeah, and it flew over and the thing, and they had to shine a light out. And as I'm telling her, my dad hears me. He stomps up behind me and grabs me, and he spins me around and grabs my biceps. And he was like, don't you tell anybody about that. He said, don't tell your friends. Don't tell your teachers. He said, don't even tell your family. He said, if you tell anybody about that, they're going to take you away, and I'm never going to see you again. He said, they're going to lock me in a loony bin for the rest of my life. And he let go of me and stormed out. And you could always tell when he was mad because he would do a 3-point turn to leave for the day. And if he was really mad, he would just jam on the gas and spin like a donut in the front yard. So he's like, and pulled out. And then my grandmother, she was really kind, sweet, kind of old lady. She just went, do you want to go to my house? And I was like, okay. And we went over there. But yeah, that was a big deal, that abduction.
What year was that? You said you're probably about 5 years old, but what year was that?
I can't remember if it was fall of 93. It might have been spring of 94, but that was about somewhere in there. There was no crops in the field. In fact, it looked like it had grass in it. So I was thinking it might have been ryegrass. And a lot of times, if they do soybeans or if they do corn, they'll take it down, and maybe it depends if it's sweet corn or not, but they'll take it down and put some grass in to hold the turf until next, so rain and snow doesn't wash out your field. So I don't know if that was, I mean, it could have been spring, but I think it might have been fall of '93. I really don't know. My dad probably would know, but I don't know exactly when.
Okay, and your ancestral background.
So I mean, I don't really know too, but I know that we have some German on my grandmother's side. I think we have a lot of Irish, Scottish, German on my dad's side of the family. But my mom's side of the family is like, they have Native American. I have cousins that are part of the Nanacoke Indian tribe. They're like my second cousins. So that's through my mom's mom.
And is any of that any Cherokee or anything like that?
I think some of it is, but I don't like telling people that because I can't say for sure. It's just what I've been told as a child, right? So my grandparents, my great-grandparents were the Day family, and that was my grandmother's parents. And then on my mother's side, or my grandfather on my mother's side, I think he was like really Scottish, Irish around there. I think Celtish, whatever you want to call it. But
Celtic,
yeah, Celtic, yeah. So I mean, I'm an American mutt, so I don't, and I don't have really strong roots to anything. I guess the closest heritage that I know is my Native American side, and that's only because some of my family, like my grandmother's cousin, is in the part of the Nanacoke tribe, and then her kids are also they were. I don't, I haven't talked to them in a long time, but yeah, so that's like the closest that I know of any, history. So.
Okay, so I think you had one encounter. I think you were saying it was 2009.
Yeah.
It was particularly poignant or significant.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I moved to Millsboro, Delaware, and was living with my mother and my stepfather. My stepfather was like a real workaholic type. So he did his thing. Like, he worked 3 jobs at a time. He was never around. Like, if he was around, he'd have, like, let's say a day or 2 off, and then he'd disappear for another week or 2. So I was living in the basement. I had the whole basement to myself. My mother had a room upstairs, and she rented rooms to people on the 3rd floor of this it's kind of like a farmhouse out there. It's on 3 acres worth of property. It's near, there's a chicken plant that's kind of near it. And the bay, the Millsboro Bay, is really close as well. Like, if you walk just a block down the road, you can jump into the water and swim out into the bay. But anyway, none of that matters. So for most of my life, when these encounters have happened, I just kind of put them down. Like, they were traumatic, but my father told me not to tell people. Nobody really listens to you anyway when you're a kid. So I got used to just not telling people. Like, I had an encounter at like 11 years old. I had one at 14, one at 15, or excuse me, 2 at 14, one at 15. But it was one of those things, like, it was so traumatic that you literally just try to forget about it. You consider, like, maybe someone drugged me. Maybe I have a brain tumor. Like, even as like a teenager, you're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why this happened to me, but you're so traumatized, you just want to pretend like it never happened. And you just stuff it down and stuff it down and stuff it down. In 2009, for whatever reason, this encounter, I wasn't able to do that. So I was downstairs. I had 2 dogs at the time. They were not allowed on the 3rd floor because one of the people that rented a bedroom was allergic to dogs. And so the deal is that we would keep them downstairs. So I never once seen them go up the steps to the 3rd floor. It's really important. It sounds silly detail. So I was working overnights at a hotel a motel. And I had an encounter maybe a week or 2 before at the hotel. And I don't have any memory of what happened. I literally blacked out, woke up hours later. The owner called me and fired me on the spot. He was like, "You're done, you're out." And I was like, "What the heck?" And he's like, "You left the building." I was like, "What are you talking about? I didn't go anywhere." And so I was so adamant about it. I was like, "I didn't go anywhere." he checked his camera systems, and he was a crazy camera guy. So he had cameras everywhere. You could not enter or exit the property without being on camera, right? So this guy, the next day he calls me and goes, "You have your job back," right? So he fires me, and then he calls me. He's like, it's a misunderstanding. So I go in for the next shift, and he's on the phone with me, and he goes, "Yeah, so I got this strange phone call that said you weren't there. And when I went and checked the cameras, I saw that you went into this hallway, and then there was a big flash of light, and then the camera went off." And he was like, "So I thought that the light must have been a car pulling in the back of the property, and you went somewhere." And he said, "But you were so adamant that I went and checked all the cameras." And he said, "Nobody entered or exited the property during that time." And he was like, "I don't know what happened." And so he was like, "It's a big flash of blue light." And I was like, "Well, can I see it?" And he was like, "Absolutely not. Nobody's allowed to see my cameras." And he was like, "For security reasons, I'm not, whatever." And so I just kind of was like, "What, I don't know what happened." I literally blacked out for like 2-ish hours. So that was like maybe a week before this happens at my house, right? I haven't had any encounters since I was 15. So one of the ways you deal with it is by telling yourself it's over. Like, you're like, they took blood, they took semen, they took skin, they stuck the needle in, like they got what they wanted. And that's one of the ways you carry forward, is by pretending like it's done, it's over, and you'll never see him again. So with missing time, you have this flash of blue light, whatever. I don't remember anything. So I don't think I was abducted. That's not even I just don't know what happened. I'm like, well, maybe someone drugged me, whatever. You tell yourself all these lies to, kind of deal with it. Anyway, so like a week later, I'm off for the night. I worked overnights. It's important. So I woke up, I normally wake up like 8 o'clock at night, 8 p.m. And I woke up, realized I had off of work, went back to sleep till like 10. Go upstairs, I eat some fried chicken, come downstairs, my dogs are laying with me in bed, I'm in the basement, I'm watching TV, and then at like 1 o'clock, one of my dogs seems to hear something, and he jumps up, barks, and goes upstairs, right? He gets upstairs, he walks across, I can hear him on the floor, he walks across the floor and laid down in the living room. And so I was like, oh, he must be a roommate or somebody, but nobody was home. I didn't know that at the time. The only one that was upstairs was my mom, and she was asleep. She takes sleeping meds, or she used to. So anyway, he crosses. The other dog, when he lies down hard on the floor, the other dog jumps up, hears him bang on the floor. She runs upstairs, right, to the first floor. They're not allowed on the second floor of the house, by the way. I don't think anything of it, because if something happened, they would bark, they would let me know, they would squeal, they would, So I just go back to watching TV. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting there on my bed, like half on my bed, watching TV, and I hear this loud bang in the basement. And so I immediately turn towards it, and it's coming from the basement has 2 rooms, and it's coming from inside the other room. And the only thing that I could think is that, well, maybe my one dog snuck down there and got in, did something, which didn't make sense, but it was the only thing I could think of, because I have line of sight on the stairs. So while I'm sitting there watching TV, the stairs are right there. So I was like, how did he sneak past me? It was like my first thought is like, it must be the dog. So I yelled at him. I was like, hey, get out of there. And he didn't, there was no sound, there's no movement. And that dog, we got it, it was pretty badly abused. So if you just caught it doing something it wasn't supposed to do, it would like run away and hide and stuff. So when I yelled his name and he didn't make any movements at all, I was like, I'm going to have to go over there and see what he's doing. So I jump up and turn around, and this creature, this gray alien, comes at me. So I had turned my back, and the only thing I could think of is she came around the corner towards me. And then when I turned back around, she was close enough that she closed the distance pretty fast. So I grabbed a knife, or tried to grab a knife from the end table to stab her. And she threw her hands up and stepped back like this. And when she said, well, she didn't say anything. She threw her hands up, and she telepathically linked with me in that moment. Like when we locked eyes, she threw her hands up and stepped back. And she was like, oh my God, he's going to kill me, in her mind. Like she was thinking, he's going to stab me in my neck, I'm going to bleed out, and I'm going to die. And she was terrified. Like her fear, I felt her fear of dying. And it was so overwhelming. And so I'm reaching for this knife. And then in this moment, she's scared. She throws her hands up. And I go, oh my God, I can't move. That's my very next thought, is I couldn't move. I couldn't grab the knife. I just was frozen with my hand hovering above the handle of the knife. And I was like, holy shit, I can't move. And as soon as she read my mind, like as soon as I thought that I can't move, she put her hands down and stepped forward and got in my face and was like, violence will not be tolerated. We mean you no harm. And she said it in like a very, this is a female voice, but a very like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, like your mother, kind of. It was like, violence will not be tolerated. And then she kind of very almost warmly said, we mean you no harm. Like kind of like she was instantly angry, and then she brought it down to like Mother Goose sympathetic kind of.
Yeah, if you don't want to get harmed, then don't kidnap people without their consent.
That's probably a good idea. But this is what she said. And so now I'm frozen there. I can't move. I'm standing, with kind of one butt cheek on the bed, right? I didn't even have enough time to like spring to action. That's how fast this all happened. So I've got kind of one ass on the bed, one leg on the floor. I still got my hand hovering there, but I could move my eyes and move my neck. Everything below the neck I could move. And so I'm looking at this lady, and then all of a sudden this dude appears right next to her. And the only way I can describe this appearance is that it was a pixelated projection. It was as if you ever seen a transition like on an old PowerPoint, the random pixelization transition between one picture and another.
Yeah.
So this, it's so hard to describe this, but he appears, right, in this random transition. It's transitioning from nothing to him. It's very hard to describe. But anyway, so I turn and I'm like, my first thought is like, what am I looking at? Because I couldn't understand what I was looking at. And he said camouflage. When he appeared, he had his one hand on his chest like this. Like, I don't know if it was touching exactly, but it was close to his chest, just one arm like this. And so he said camouflage, and I got this telepathic thing where he was turning it off. He had something in his hand, like I thought like an implant or something, but it was like he was using it. He was touching this thing to his chest, and there was like a technology. He was turning it off, like maybe if you press a button. But this is all telepathic. It reminded me like of what we have today with a credit card, and you just put it near the machine, it goes boop. Like that's the communication I got. So he appears, he says camouflage, he sends this to me, and then he immediately, I think he turns to that lady, and they start talking. And he was like, we should kill him. And the lady was like, no, that's not necessary. He's not going to hurt anybody. And she turned to me and she was like, are you? So she knew I was listening to both of them talk, right? And this is all telepathic. I've heard no vocalists. I'm just listening to them in my mind communicate. And so she knew I was listening to her. So I don't know if this was all for show or whatever, but she turned, she was like, are you? And at that point, I'm beat. I lost. Like, I'm frozen. I can't do anything. I can't move. Like, I recognize that whatever this is, I've lost. So I was like, no, I'm definitely not going to be violent, right? So they turned back towards me. The male told me that he said that he was the highest ranked military liaison for the mission and its crew. And so I don't know what he's talking about, obviously, but he tells me that there's a craft outside and that he is even more highly ranked than the captain on the craft, right? So I don't even know. I'm in the basement. I have no idea that there's a UFO outside at this point, right?
Yeah, this guy sounds like an arrogant prick, but anyway.
Yeah, no. He kind of was a jerk, but he said he was the highest ranked military liaison for the ship and its crew, and that he said that he would kill me without thinking a thing. Like, he would kill me without feeling anything, because it was what he was programmed to do. It was his job, and that he was in charge of the safety of the mission and the crew. And he told me if I'd attempted to harm any of the crew or endanger the mission, that he would kill me without feeling a thing. And when he said this to me, he showed me, it's so hard to describe this, but he showed me emptiness. The closest thing I could think is if you're in your house and you've got the air conditioner running and then the power goes out, the silence is deafening. Or if you're in the woods and all of a sudden all the bugs shut up, It was like that. It was like empty. He telepathically showed me nothing. Like, I will kill you and I won't feel a thing, like a sociopath or something. And when he did that to me, the word robot came to mind. I don't know why, but the word robot, like he was programmed or trained to do this mission. He would do it without thinking. He would just reactively do it, right? Then the female started talking to me. And so I turned to her and she said something, but I don't think it was the same thing. She said something, she told me that she was an anthropologist, but I don't think that's the actual word she used. I think she said something different and we don't have a word for it. And it was like the closest translation, but that doesn't really matter. But she said anthropologist, I'm an anthropologist. And then she reiterated when there was some sort of confusion. She realized there was this confusion and she reiterated, she said, I'm an expert on human beings. And she said, it is my job to make contact with the people that we have selected for this program. And so this transgresses. And she goes, you need to come with us. And I'm like, absolutely not. And she's like, you have to. Excuse me, that's not true. So they tell me this stuff. And then a third one comes down. There's a hallway just off to my left. A third one comes down the hallway and walks up behind the little man. So you got the taller female. She's probably like 4.5, 5 feet. And then the other guy's maybe 3.5, 4 feet is what I'm guessing. And then you have another one slightly taller than the shortest guy. He comes up, and so I look at him because he's moving towards us, and I'm like, who are you? My first thought is, who are you? And he told me that he was an assistant and that he was there to assist them in my capture. And he even told me that he was the one that made the noise as a diversion so that I wouldn't bring harm to them. So he was the one that made me turn around to look the other way while they snuck up behind me. And so I got really angry at him. I don't know why this angered me so bad, but I just got really pissed at him. I was like, why would you do that to me, kind of thing. He didn't answer me. But anyway, then the female told me, it's time to go. You have to come with us. And I was like, no, I'm not going with you. And she said, you have to. And I just started doing it. I just started, like, without, consciously, I don't want to do any of this. And I, number one, walked out in front of me. I walked up behind him, and I literally followed him across the room towards the stairs. And the other two fell in line behind us. So I'm following him, and I'm like, why am I doing? I don't understand why I'm following this guy. We walk upstairs, and as we're going upstairs, I thought to myself, I was like, oh my God, my mother. Like, what's going to happen to my mom? And so her bedroom's right off to the left. So I get up there, and he tells me, he said, oh, don't worry. We've left someone to look over your mother until your safe return. No harm will come to her. And so I get up and I look over, and there's a creature. He's just standing a foot from my mother's bed watching her. And she's like laying completely out, mouth open, snoring. And he's just staring at her. We went across the kitchen, dining room, living room it was the kitchen, there was a dining room and then the kitchen and out the back door. As soon as I got around that corner where I could have line of sight of the back door, I could see all these flashing lights. I didn't know what it was. I mean, just lights. And once I got out the door, you could see that there was a decently sized object in the backyard, maybe 15, 20 yards from the back door. And it had all these flashing different colored lights. It was blinding. You couldn't really tell what it was. But anyway, I'm walking across. I have no socks and shoes on. I could feel the ground. I'm following the liaison guy. I called him number one, but I'm following him. When we get close, within like 20 feet, those lights were just like the light I saw when I was a kid. It was like a cone. And I wondered if it was some sort of camouflage, because let's say you drove by and saw this, it would just look like a party or maybe a police car or something. But when you got about between, let's call it less than 20 feet from the craft, these cones were shooting out like this. So you could see the craft easy, but like, it's kind of like a flashlight. If you have a flashlight pointed, right in your face, it's blinding you. But once you get close and you walk up, it's now pointed to the side of you. So you have perfect visibility. So when I got up there was what I thought was a ramp, by the way. It was dark outside. So I thought this was a ramp with ridges on it, like on a moving truck, right? So it's got like those texture ridges so you can get up there. So anyway, I'm preoccupied looking at these lights because I can't see where they're coming from. This is a perfect silver tic-tac shaped object with these lights are going down to like a pinpoint from the skin of the craft. And even when I got a few feet away, there was no, like, you couldn't see any bulb or anything. Like, there was no, they came down to such a point. The only thing I could think of is like maybe the lens is like embedded in the skin. And so as I'm watching this, and I trip going up what I thought was a ramp, it was stairs. So I trip, I fall into the creature in front of me. I push him in his shoulders. I've got a really good feeling of him. Like he was heavier than I thought. His clothing it almost had like a foam in it. It was like a plasticky, it felt like a textured, synthetic fabric on top. But then it was squishy underneath, like almost like if he had like maybe a half inch or, like padding. And then I felt his shoulder blades are really hard, like if you tackled somebody in football, like really hard bone. And he was super heavy compared to, I thought he would be really light. And I'm guessing he's probably, I don't know, 80 to 100 pounds is what I'm guessing. I bumped into him. He staggered forward. He didn't fall down. I was able to use him to keep myself from falling. And I looked down because I was like, I didn't know what I tripped over. And when I looked down, I saw how small the steps were. The steps were like 6 inches wide, maybe like between 6 and 4 inches tall and maybe 6 inches wide. My feet were too big to walk up the steps. Like my heel was overhanging. And so I'm looking down and I literally was like, why would they build it like this? And it's so small. I was thinking like, why would they build it like this? And when I looked up, he did a about face. And, oh, by the way, this broke the telepathic whatever when I tripped. So in this moment, I was like, what the heck is going on? And I looked up at him. He locked eyes with me and he said, we have to build it this way for gravity. And he told me that the entire ship was like a landing ship and that the entire thing was designed for the weight of gravity. So that's why everything was built the way it was built. So that way, when they turn the field off, when they land this craft, it doesn't get crushed under gravity. So it's all built with gravity in mind. And when I locked eyes with him, he showed me a schematic. It was a white background with black lines, very architectural, like a schematic of a house or something. But it was like an animation. I mean, it moved. Like it started with this very simple white and black outline, and then it morphed and moved around, and it focused in on the stairs. And I could see that the stairs do this, and then they go up and they go underneath the first floor. There's only one main floor of this craft, and then there's an undercarriage, and then there's some sort of overhead, but they're not floors. They're like more like a cavity or whatever. But the ships, he told me that if the weight of gravity, under gravity, the stairs are extremely strong. But if you pick them up, they're extremely weak. And that they're made that way so that they can store underneath the belly of the craft. So they go up and they slide in. And the closest thing I could think of was like a garage door, like where it's like the plates are pinned together. And when it's down and locked in place, it's pretty strong. But the moment you break it and it goes up, it becomes extremely weak on that curve. That was the only thing I could think of. But he told me to come in. He got his telepathic whatever back when we locked eyes. Told me to come in. When I first walked in, I looked left, and there was a curved hallway to the left. And there were I-beams that started along the wall, from the floor, but they came up along the wall, curved above your head. And as they did that, the I-beam got thicker. So it was really skinny on the edge of the wall and really thick above your head. And then I turned right, which is the direction he went, and there were 4 creatures. So this was like if you think of a tic-tac, this was like the front section, right? And the door is probably 3/4 of the way to one side. Right. So we walked up, we went in, I see the hallway this way, and then I look and I turn into this cavity. The moment I turned in there, all 4 creatures turned to me and looked at me. And they all told me that they had been informed, they knew what I had done. I had tried to stab that other creature, and that they were going to treat me as a threat while I was on their craft. They were going to keep a close eye on me to make sure that I didn't try to harm anyone on the craft. It was the first thing that happened. So it's kind of like in math class when you're late and you walk in and everybody So I was like, oh man. Anyway, so they told me what they did in order. There was a center chair, and these were egg-shaped chairs with a perfect conical pedestal base to the floor. And then around the rim of the craft, there were 3 tables that came from the wall, like sculpted out, and then went back into the wall like this. Like they came from the wall, went out, and went like that. And they had a chair in front of it with the pedestal base. Everything looked metal. Everything. Floor, all of it. The closest creature to me said it was communications. 3 of them were sitting at their tables with their hands on this, table that come out from the wall. And so the one said it was in control of communications. The other one said it was external sensors. And then the one on the other side said it was internal systems. It was monitoring internal systems. The center guy said that he was the captain. He said that he literally piloted the craft, like he flew it. And then the other ones were monitoring these other systems. Number 1, who was there with me, he's the closest one to me at this point, tells me I need to get undressed. So they stripped me right there. He forced me to take my shirt off, but he didn't force me to take my bottoms off. So he was like, you have to take off your clothes. And I was like, I don't want to. And he said, you have to. And then I just did it. And then he was like, you have to take off the rest of your clothes. And before he forced me, I was like, okay. And I just did it on my own. Like, he didn't make me do it. I was like, I started to understand what was going on. Like, they were going to tell you to do stuff. And if you did it, they wouldn't force you. But they have some way of, I don't know if you can call it influence or whatever you want to call it, hypnosis, but they literally, it's like they can gain control of you. Mm-hmm. So he strips me naked. He tells me to go down the hallway. Some of them follow me. I don't know. I can't remember which ones followed me. I know number 1 came, but I think 2 more came with him. It could have been the ones from inside the house, but I just don't know. But anyway, they bring me in that. So that hallway had a single room on the right with the arched doorway. We go in there, table, little side tables with tools on them. So they bring me in there. They make me sit on the table. They make me lie down, all this stuff. They leave. So those 3 creatures, I watch them walk out, and they went to the right as they went out the door. 2 more creatures came in. When they came in that doorway, I was like, oh my God, are they naked? Like that was my first thought. I was like, oh my God, they're naked. And the one he came in the door first, so he was closest to me. He said, we have like a skin tight environmental suit. That's all he said. So I didn't know if he meant, and I don't know now. I think what he was trying to say is that tan skin that they have is some sort of environmental suit. But at the time, I didn't know what he was trying to say. So I was like, oh my God, he's naked. And he said, we've got a skin tight suit on. And I was like, so they must be wearing like something like a skin toned leotard. That was just my first thought. They must be wearing some sort of tight fitting leotard. But I don't think that's the case. Because when he came up to me, you could easily see their veins and stuff underneath their skin. Their skin is so thin and transparent that you could literally see their tendons and their veins on their face. But anyway, he came up to me. The second one came in around my right side. They started talking to each other. They did not let me listen to them. So I don't know what they were saying to each other, which is also interesting that they can, if they choose to, that they can block you out somehow. But anyway, so he picked up, the first thing he did was he was trying to assure me everything was going to be okay and I was safe and I didn't need to be afraid and all this stuff. And I was still very afraid. So he took his hand and he waved it in front of my face like this. And the moment he did that, if you've ever gotten IV medication, it feels like a drip of water hits your head and then it just washes down your body. When he waved his hand in front of my face, it was like taking like Xanax or something. Like all the fear, anxiety, it just washed away. And then you're at this kind of very calm, completely fine with what's going on. If 2 seconds ago you were ready to fight and kill someone, trying to get out, I got to get out of here, I got to fight back, I got to do this, and now you're just like docile. So the one on my right picked up a tool. It was a handle with a needle sticking out of the top, like almost like a gun. He stabbed me in the eye with it, in the right eye.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he put it wasn't in my pupil, it was off to the side, but he stuck it in my eye, and I immediately lost vision in my eye. Like, it just blacked out.
Did it hurt?
Oh, yeah. Burned, I guess, is a better, like, it was more like getting burned. Like, if you ever got burned with hot grease, it was more like that. It wasn't, I don't know how to explain it to you. When they numb you like that, it's like you feel it, but you're not reacting. Like, if I burn myself in the kitchen, I'm like, oh, and I'm running, I'm washing it off. But there's something about it where it's like, I feel this, but you're not panicking. You're not, I don't know if they immobilized me, and perhaps that's why, and I just couldn't go anywhere. But anyway, so he stabbed me. I lost vision, completely black in this eye. So now I can only see the one on my left. And the one on my left seemed to be in charge. So I call him the doctor. I call the other one the nurse, because the one on my right seemed to be like an assistant of some kind. So the doctor reached down and picks up this tool. It looked like kind of like a tuning fork. I mean, it didn't look like a tuning fork at all, but it was in the shape of a tuning fork. It was a handle and 2 prongs. He takes his 3 long fingers, puts it on this thing, picks it up like this, like with almost like suction cups or something, and then he rolled it into his palm like that. The angle that I was laying at, I could not see the other creature pick up his tool. It's like, so he just reached down to my periphery and then picked it. I didn't see it until it was in his hand. But the other one, I was leaned to that side, kind of my one eye, in this direction. So I could see more of my left side. I could see the edge of the table. I physically watched him pick that tool up. So I could see his hand. So my orientation is, I see less on this side, I see more on this side. He picks this thing up, and then I'm like, what do you, my thought is, like, I was like, oh my God, what are you going to do with that? And he said, brain mapping. That's all he said, brain mapping. And he jammed it up my nose. It punched through the cartilage. If you've ever gotten a fist fight and you've broken someone's jaw or their nose, that gross crunch noise,
yeah,
it just, imagine that, but now it's your face. So when he plunged it in there, it was that pop sound. There was an immediate pressure on my brain where I was pressing on the inside of my skull. Like, you could feel the probe was pressing like this. And then when he turned it on, it was the day after it happened, I said to someone, or I said something, I might have said this to myself, but I said it was like 1,000 bees exploding out of my brain. That was the closest thing that I could describe it. When he turned this thing on, it was as if there was some sort of field or some sort of, I don't even know what you want to call it, but it was like bouncing around in my head. It was like a radio wave or something, but it excited my entire brain, and it was like maybe an equivalent of sticking a taser probe in your brain and just hitting shock. Like, it literally, the worst, I've crushed my spine, like, after this happened. I've never been in worse pain before. This is the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. It was extremely, extremely painful. And then it just stopped. It didn't last that long. It was like he put it up there, did this thing, pulled it out. And then he leaned in and he put his right eye right up against my left eye, like real close. I don't know why. At first, I thought he was leaning in to look at his work after he removed the tool, right? But he didn't. He put his one eye up against my eye. And my right eye very slowly faded back to vision. And I could see the other creature standing there. He had finished whatever he was doing. The doctor, when he did that, it was like he was giving me something. This is so hard to explain to people. It was like he was giving me some sort of information. And I was like, what are you doing to me? And he was like, it was for later. He said it was for later. I don't even know what that, like, when they do this, like, you can't parse it out. Like, it's too fast, it's too much. And you have no idea. I knew he was doing something to me, but I didn't understand what he was doing. But he said it was for later. So then he stands up, he leans back up, he talks to the other one. So now they're talking to each other. He physically motions with his hand at one point, and then they just follow each other out of the room. At that point, when they left, I blacked out. I don't know if it was something they gave me. I don't know if maybe it was just the pain, or I have no idea. So I lose consciousness at a stage. I have some memory, you know, it's choppy. I normally don't tell people about it because it's like a second here and a second there and a second here. But anyway, I black out. When I come to, they are trying to get me back in bed. So the same creatures that took me are attempting to put me back in my bed in the basement. They carried me across the room. I could see the television. I could see the clock on, it was 4:09 a.m. So this was, they abducted me, it was 12:18 on the clock. So this is like almost 2 hours later. I could hear the television, so I know the episode that was on, all that. So they bring me in, they lay me down, and then they leave. And then I was able to, the way they laid me on my pillow, I was slightly elevated, my head was, and I could physically watch them leave the room. They followed each other the same way we left earlier in a line, and they were pivoting and walking together so perfectly that I had the thought, I was like, they're like army ants. Like there was this moment, I was like, they're like little army ants. They walked upstairs to the first floor, and then I was immobilized. I couldn't move. I could just watch and hear and listen and stuff. So I tell people that I might have fallen asleep because something weird happens. So I'm laying there and I'm panicking. I'm like, I got to run. I got to get out of here. I got to fight. I got to do something. And we had these little slit windows on the one side of the house where the basement is. So when the sun comes up, it lights up the basement. I physically watched the sun come up and light up the basement, but it was like it was on fast forward. It was like if you took the, let's say, hour that it would normally take for that to happen, it was like you put it into 15 minutes. So it felt like I was there immobilized for like 15 minutes, but all of a sudden it was like I could move again. I flopped down on the ground. I grabbed the baseball bat from the corner of the room and ran outside. Even though I had just watched the sun come up in the basement, I didn't believe it because it was like, it was too fast. So I burst out of the basement with a bat in my hand, opened the door, the sun hits me in the face, and I was like, this is impossible. I couldn't understand what was going, like in that moment, I was really confused by what the heck just happened. So I ran around the back of the house. This was like 6 something in the morning, almost 7. I run around the back, my mom's gone. Nobody's home. So I went in, and I can't remember what I did I think I went in and I grabbed the phone and called my mom. And so I'm outside and I'm like, where are you? And she's like, I just left the house. And I was like, when are you coming back? And she was like, what's going on? What's wrong with you? And I was like, I need you. And she was like, what's happened? You got to tell me what happened. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I think I just had a bad dream. And she was like, okay, you had a bad dream. And she said, why? She's like, you haven't talked to me like this since you were a little kid. And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, well, you're going to have to just hold on. I'm going to the doctor. And she was like, I'll be back at like 10, 11 o'clock. And I was like, okay. And she was like, are you sure you're okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And she hung up. And so, and I literally, so I'm 21 or something. And I'm like I don't know what's going on. I'm having a breakdown. Pretty much, not a breakdown, but I still think they might be in the house too. Like I'm confused at what's going on. I go back in the house. I immediately hear noise from upstairs. So I jump back out, like literally almost fall down the steps. I look up on the second floor window and I see my dogs. And I was like, that's impossible. So we had a bedroom upstairs that was literally bolted shut. Like it had a lock on the outside of the door and it was padlocked shut. My dogs are in that room. So I sweep the entire house. I didn't notice it, but my mother's dog was missing as well. So she had a small dog. I didn't notice at the time. I sweep the house. They're clearly not there. I go upstairs. I assume the door's unlocked somehow. I'm like, oh, somebody must have put them in there. Maybe my mom did it or something. I couldn't get in that room. The door was locked. So I went outside. It's a long story. I don't want to get into it, but I went outside and was trying to get like bolt cutters or anything I could do to break into that room. I spent hours trying to break in. And it got to the point where I was like, because of the type of lock it was, I couldn't just break it off with a hammer or a crowbar or something. The only thing I could think of, I was like, I'm going to cut through the wall with a razor blade and then just replace the drywall. So I was just going to cut near it, right? Because the dogs had been in there for at least a few hours, and I didn't want them to pee and poop in the room. So finally, I was like, okay, I'm gonna cut the. Can't get in without like ruining the door. This is like a 200-year-old farmhouse oak door. You know what I mean? I didn't want to cut it. So as soon as I was like, I'm going to cut in, it hit me that there was a crawl space to the side of that bedroom in the roof, and it was hidden. So there was a faux bookshelf, and behind it was a hot water heater, and then there was a crawl space. And I remember seeing it when we fixed the hot water heater. So I got in there. I slipped between the hot water heater, which was difficult. I was way too big to be doing this, but I did get in. And then there's no floorboards, it's just rafters. So I had to crawl across the rafters, and I followed an air intake. We had a furnace in the basement, and it had shot up these air intakes. So I followed this 12-inch air return back into the corner of the crawl space, completely dark back there. And there was an 18-inch return. So they used to make these old square returns with like a circle for the thing so air could go in and out. Like the one air went in one direction one way and out the other. So I pulled that apart and I pushed it in and stripped the screws because it was just drywall. So I was like, I'll just push it in. And I slid through that hole. I broke the wall a little bit because I was too big, even for that 18-inch return, I was too big to slip through there. That vent went into the closet of that bedroom. I was so scared because I knew that the old farmhouse handles have locks on them. So I was so scared to open like the lock, but I turned it, it was unlocked, opened the door. My dogs are freaking out. I ended up getting them to come to me. I checked for poop and pee. There was no poop and pee. I checked to see if the windows were unlocked because I was like, maybe somebody like brought them in the windows or something. So I checked that. They were locked from the inside. In fact, they were like painted shut. But anyway, I got them into that hole and grabbed them by their collar, pulled them in, and I like scooped them up against my chest and walked on 2 knees and 1 hand across the crawl space. And then when I got them over to the hot water heater, I pushed them through that gap and they ran downstairs. I took both of them out. I slid my way out. And so this is now almost 11 o'clock. When I stood up in the bathroom, there's a mirror, but it's just at that right angle. So when I went in there and was getting in the hole, I never saw myself. So I get out of that hole and step up, and the very first thing I see is my reflection. My entire right eye was bloodshot, like the whole right eye. So I leaned in to look at my eye. And it wasn't bloodshot at all. It's hard to explain. When you have a burst blood vessel, right, you know what that looks like. This wasn't that. It was like every single one of the blood vessels in my eye had expanded. Like it from a distance, my entire eye looked red, like I had burst a blood vessel. When I got closer, it was like the veins had grown in size, maybe 10 times their normal, right? And I had this little black round object in my eye, right where that they put that needle in my eye. It's probably maybe like a millimeter wide, and it was just tucked underneath the skin. Like you could easily see it with a mirror. I realized that I was spending too much time looking at myself, and I'm starting to kind of go, did that really happen? Like I'm trying to figure things out, but I was like, my dogs are going to pee, and they've been locked up here for 3 hours, so I got to let them outside. I ran downstairs, opened the back door. They ran outside and they started fighting. So they sniffed their way down the back door to the backyard. This is like 3 acres, you know, and I don't have shoes on, so I'm just standing on the steps watching them. And they sniff the ground and go in this big circle. And then they both do it, following each other. And then they come back, they stop. And my one dog starts to go into the circle they just made with their, like into the center of the circle they just made. My other dog bites my first dog that tried to enter the circle really hard, like harder than I've ever seen. Just grabs her on the neck and just snaps her. And I'm going, whoa, like, and I start screaming. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? I'm like, you know, so I'm yelling at them. And I was like, go to the bathroom. And then they bark at each other a little bit and they run off. And they used the bathroom. And then when they came back, they started sniffing again. And I was like, get in the house. I was like, just get in here. And so, because I don't have shoes on, I can't chase them. So I was like, just go inside. So they run inside. My one dog goes up to the basement, starts growling, like crazy growling. His hackles go up, and he's just like I'm like, what the F is going on? So I yell at him. I tell him to go lay down in the living room. I'm like, go lay down. He goes and lays down. My mom comes home, and she goes, and I go, hey, the dogs were locked upstairs. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, they were in the side room. They were locked in there. And she was like, well, maybe your stepdad came home. And I was like, why would he come home in the middle of the night and lock the dogs up? Like, this isn't making sense. So she was like, I'll call him and ask. So she calls him, and he's like, I haven't been home in like 3 days. Like, no, I'm not going to come home in the middle of the night to lock his dogs up in a different bedroom. Like, it's so stupid. So she called him, and he was like, no, it wasn't him, but he wanted you to cut the grass. And I was like, okay. So I was like, all right, I'll cut the grass. So I go and get changed, right? I took my shirt, my underwear, my shorts, and put them like on the ground in the basement. And I get changed. I put on some old shoes because I know I'm going to get grass everywhere or whatever. And then I took the tools that I brought inside from the shed, and I took them out to the shed. And it was like a crowbar and bolt cutters and whatever. So I grabbed the weed whacker, and I got my headphones in, and I started up. And all of a sudden I hear this like wah, wah, wah. And I turn around, and my neighbor is like 10 feet behind me. His name was Curtis. My mom used to call him Mr. Curtis. He has a hard time walking. Like, he's there. He's like 52. He's all there, but he's got like a back problem. His legs, like, he just shakes from the waist down. And so he's standing there without his walker or cane, and he's yelling at me. And I could see he's agitated. So I pop my earbuds out, and I'm just trying to forget about what happened last night, by the way. I can't stop thinking about it, but I'm trying to drown it out. And so he goes, hey. And I turn, I'm like, wait, let me cut this off. And he goes, did you see it? And I was like, see what? And he was like, the helicopter. And I was like, what are you talking about? What helicopter? And he was like, I know you saw it. And he got in my face and started pointing my chest. Like, he was like accusing me. And he was like, I know you're with them or something. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What helicopter? And he said, well, at least I thought it was a helicopter. And he proceeds to tell me, this is what he says. He says, I woke up 2:15 a.m. I went to the kitchen, and he pointed behind himself at his house, which is very close to our house, right? And he goes, and he's like, I went to the kitchen to get some water, and I stood right there in that window, and I saw it all. He's like, I saw everything. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, he said, I saw the lights outside the window of that thing hovering above your house. And he said, I thought it was a helicopter. It came over, it stopped, it came down in your backyard, and it sat right there. And he pointed to where my dogs had just circled that area and started fighting each other. So I'm not close enough to see that. I mean, it's, I'm close, but I'm not that close, right, to get a good look at it. So he's like, and it landed right there. And he's like, between those two trees right there, right? So I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so he tells me that he stood there and he thought that I was with them. This is a very strange conversation. He never once said, I saw you get abducted by gray aliens. That's not what he said. He said, I saw it all. I saw everything. I stood right there. I stood there. I watched the whole thing for 20, almost 30 minutes, and blah, 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 blah. He said he went to the window. He saw it land. He said he knew I was with them. He never said who them was. He said, I thought it was a helicopter. He said, when I saw it, I expected like police. He's like, I thought maybe it was like an emergency helicopter, and maybe one of you guys were hurt. Maybe your mom or something had to fall down or something. And he was like, so I was expecting police and fire trucks. And he's like, but nobody ever came. And he's like, I watched it. And he said, when it finally left, it lifted up a few feet off the ground. And he said, it shot straight up so fast. He said, if I blinked, I wouldn't have known where it went. He said, if I had just blinked at the wrong moment, it would have been as if it disappeared. And he said, I thought it was a helicopter. And then he started naming all sorts of things. He was like, I've seen this, and I've seen that, and I've seen this, I've seen this airplane and this missile, and I've seen this. I've never seen anything fly that fast in my entire life. He apologized to me. He said he didn't know. At one point, he said, I didn't know whether I should shoot at them or whether I should call the cops. And he said, I was so afraid if I called the law that they would think I was senile. He said, once it flew away, I decided to sleep on it. And he was like, I think, so when he first accused me, it was like he accused me of, like, I can only imagine what he saw, right? But it was like he was accusing me of being one of them. Like, I know you're with them kind of thing. And then when I started like panicking and like, oh man.
Why don't we end it here? Because we're like way over. But let's continue. Let's continue this thread.
Oh, I'm so sorry, dude.
No, it's not your fault. It's my fault. This is actually really fascinating, but let's continue it in the next episode because I think it sounds like we got most of the story, but
yeah,
we'll cover the remainder of that and then we'll get into the 2018 situation. But I thought the detail that you had was exceptional in terms of kind of getting a sense for what a ship looks like. It sounds like it's like a Tic Tac.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like on the outside. It was like a silver Tic Tac shape. So you might call it oval. It wasn't perfectly cylindrical. Yeah. Like it wasn't perfectly flat on the belly.
It was tapered at the ends.
Yeah, it was tapered. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking with you in the next episode.
Yeah, of course. Just reach out.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.